Today is Tuesday, 15 July 2008. We are at the Isaac Griswold Public Library in Whitehall, New York, and we are interviewing Mr. Henry Gurney, who is a World War II veteran. Mr. Gurney, for the record, would you please state your full name and date and place of birth, please?
Henry F. Gurney, March 24th, 1925, Whitehall, New York.
Okay, and did you attend school in Whitehall?
Whitehall High School, right.
Okay, and before you entered the service, did you go on to college at all, or
No.
have any advanced schooling?
No.
Okay, and do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I was working as an usher in the Capitol Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we didn't have any idea where Pearl Harbor was. The Jats that bombed Pearl Harbor, well, where's Pearl Harbor?
Mm-hmm. Well, most
Some
people
knew
didn't.
about it, but it was,
Okay,
so we hit the geography books to find out where it was, why we didn't have a clue.
and what year did you graduate from high school?
43.
43. Okay, and when and where did you enter the service?
When did I enter the service?
Yes,
August of 43.
August of 43.
I got my draft notice when I was 18 in
Mhm.
March, but they allowed all of the graduates to, or they give them a deferment so they could graduate. Some of them didn't bother. Some of them just went or enlisted and went right away.
Okay.
I took the deferment and graduated, and then I got called up in August the 3rd.
All right, and whereabouts did you go for your basic training?
Fort Hood, Texas. Fort Hood, Texas was a tank destroyer
Mm-hmm.
base. Yeah.
Now, did you pick tank destroyer school, or
No.
they just?
You didn't have the opportunity.
Okay,
They assigned you.
okay. And was that your first time away from home?
It was, yeah.
Okay. And what was basic training like?
I enjoyed it. It was very regimented, but it suited me.
Mm-hmm. What was the climate like?
Texas was hot
Uh-huh.
when we were there. In fact, we took a long basic, was from August until December, which is longer than usual. But I can remember it was so hot, and an extended period of no rain at all. It got hot and dusty. And when it did rain, it rained hard. Everything turned to mud. Fortunately, we had duck boards, which was slabs of wood that put over the dirt to
Mhm.
make it easier. Slabs. What are they? There's the name for them. I can't think of it now.
Okay.
But it rained so hard that I wrote home and told about it. It was an experience.
Uh-huh.
After so many days, we finally got some rain, and then the whole place turned to mud. And a few hours later, the sun came up and it's dried again. I mean, just that one extreme to the other.
Any problems with like snakes or scorpions there? Anything like that?
Beg your pardon?
Any problems with like snakes or scorpions there?
There wasn't a great deal of problems with it. We were alerted to the fact that when we did the what they call the battle conditioning course, which you ran every morning, there was one section of it where you had to crawl under barbed wire,
Mm-hmm.
and you're on your back and you're pulling yourself forward and trying to keep your thing. But we were warned that occasionally there would be a snake. And while you're doing this, you got a machine gun firing over you.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to pop up and get in the way of a machine gun. And apparently one young fellow, I guess, did pop up or got surprised by a snake, but fortunately he didn't get hit with a machine gun.
Uh-huh.
I think they probably had a machine gun aimed high, but you hear the bullets whizzing over you, and it makes it real realistic.
Okay. Now, did you get any advanced or specialized training
No,
after basic?
no, that was it.
Okay.
In basic, you were either learned to drive the tank, or you were a gunner, or you were an ammunition loader.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, you qualified for the various weapons. 45 revolver, the M1 rifle, and the 30 and 50 caliber machine guns.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we spent our time doing.
Okay, and what was your specialty? What job did they train you for?
I was a machine gunner.
Machine gunner, okay.
You
And you trained on the 50, was it the 50 caliber? Or
know. No, 30.
30 caliber?
30.
Okay. And did you, okay, once you completed your training, where did you go from there?
When we completed our training, they took us out of the tank destroyers and sent us to Camp Carson, Colorado, which we were told for the formation of the 71st Infantry Division.
Mm-hmm.
So we were up there for a few months in the wintertime. And
Okay.
yeah, for the few months that we were there, we trained as infantry people. And then from there, we went on maneuvers to California, a place called the Hunter Leggett Military Reservation. I guess it's probably still used.
Was that in Northern or Southern California?
Southern California.
Okay.
And it was below, I think it was north of Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around San Jose.
Okay.
All right. In taking the maneuvers, we were up in the mountains, and just the fact that we were in California, we thought we were going to be shipped to the Pacific. It didn't work out that way, because at some period during the maneuvers, I think during the spring, we were granted a furlough. And I know I had a 15-day furlough to come home from California.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go from San Jose, I guess it was, up to San Francisco to get a train to come to New York. The train was called the Challenger. It was a day coach all the way from California to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Took 5 days. Give me 5 days home, because I had to allow 5 days to get back.
Yeah.
So 15-day furlough, I got 5 days home.
Okay, now this
The
was
thing that I remembered, we ate box lunches most of the time.
so this was, you're talking the spring of 1944 at that point?
Yes,
Okay.
right.
All right, and then once you got back again, what happened next?
This is kind of ridiculous, because we got back, and we weren't there a week or two, and they put us on a troop train and brought us to the East Coast,
Uh-huh.
to Fort Meade, Maryland. When we think about it, why in the heck didn't they give us a delay en route and let us have more time at home, save us that trip of going cross country and back again?
Well, that's the wisdom of the military.
That's what it was. But the trip by troop train back to the East Coast was much better, because we had bunks and we had hot meals,
Mhm.
these sorts of the troops. So that was much better. But the fact that and then we went to Fort Meade, Maryland, which was a port of embarkation for going to Europe.
Okay. And do you remember you went over by ship?
By ship in a huge convoy.
Uh-huh.
Well, because when we left Fort Meade, Maryland, I know there was a convoy that left that port, and north of us there was another group of ships that joined the convoy, and south of us, as far as you could see, as far ahead and both sides and in back of you, there was convoys. And of course you can only go as fast as the slowest ship. And then on the edge of all this convoy, you got your destroyers and your protective naval vessels that are protecting the convoy against the U-boats or the submarines or
Okay.
whatever any enemy action might occur.
Now, did you go over with the 2nd Division?
No.
Okay.
We went over, we were unattached.
Okay.
I think we ended up as being the replacements.
Okay. Now, what was the living conditions like aboard ship? Was it pretty crowded?
It was. You'd have thousands of men on a ship, so crowded in fact that it was a continual chow line.
Mm-hmm.
You only ate twice a day because there's so many people to feed you. They just finish one meal and you start all over again. And then they tried to get you, at least for an hour, up on deck, because of all the decks, there were probably 3 or 4 decks there where they were just loaded with troops. and the sleeping accommodation were just hammocks, and they were
Uh-huh.
1, 2, 3, 4 high. And you'd have a division, probably, if the ship was large enough, you'd have a whole division on that ship.
Now, did you get sick at all on ship?
Beg your pardon?
Did you get seasick at all?
No, that's unusual. We didn't get seasick going across the ocean, but going across the English Channel, that's where it hit us.
Okay,
It was
and
much rougher than the ocean.
whereabouts did you land?
In Plymouth, England.
Okay.
Yeah, we were only there for a short while, and then the thing that I remember there was that the English accommodations for their barracks were primitive compared to ours, what we had in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They had straw in their mattresses, which we found unusual.
Huh.
But we weren't there long enough to find much fault with it.
Okay.
And then we were moved right to the dock where we were to load up to go to prepare for D-Day.
Okay. Do you want to tell us about what that was like? Did you go with basically the first or second wave on June 6th?
The division that I got attached to went in on D1.
Okay.
On D1. I can remember, as I mentioned before, we got we got sick going across the English Channel, as opposed to going across the Atlantic, and no sign of illness. I remember as we, I think I was on a huge tugboat going across the channel, and we went from the tugboat. We went down the rope ladders onto the LCVPs, which is Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel.
Mm-hmm.
So you went down the rope ladders. Before we went down the rope ladder, the cook stood there with a whole bunch of donuts. Give each of us a donut. This is probably the last thing he could do, or the only thing he could do for us. But I thought about that later. He's not going to see us again. We're not going to see him again. But he knew where we were going, and we were not. But I thought that's all he could do, was give us a donut.
Huh. Now, did you get the practice going down that rope ladder beforehand, or was that the first? Okay.
Yeah, we had practiced that both in the States and over there.
Okay. And you landed on Omaha Beach?
On Omaha, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
I don't remember a great deal about it. I know all of the obstructions that were on the beach that were there to delay the advance of the troops, and to stop the advance of the vehicles and the tanks particularly. And there were barbed wire to stop the troops anyway too. And about the only way you got over them was just lay flat on them, and somebody jumped on your back and jumped over them.
Mm-hmm.
An awful lot of the guys got killed that way.
Now, you were under, when you were
yeah.
crossing or going across the beach, you were under heavy
Yeah,
fire.
yeah, there was still a lot of enemy fire.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was still enemy planes flying over.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to get off the beach and under cover?
I don't know. Actually, I don't remember the time of day that we hit the beach, whether it was morning, afternoon, or night. It seems to me it might, for practical purposes, it should have been morning.
Mm-hmm.
And if it did, it took us all day to get on the beach and to get beyond the cliff.
Okay.
Because there was a cliff right there in front of us, and we had to, some of us had to rappel up the cliff to get to where we were going. There was a pillbox up on that cliff that was taking shots at all the ships that were coming in. I mean, and had heavy artillery there. There was, and some of the ships got hit. A lot of the ships that were carrying the personnel, the troops, a lot of them got hit. I mean, they were sitting ducks. I mean, the guys were sitting up there with these these huge cannons, plus the machine guns that they had.
Mm-hmm.
There was an awful lot of troops that lost their lives on the beach.
Now, were you separated at all from your group or unit?
No, our group stayed pretty much together.
Mm-hmm.
There were groups though that didn't land where they were supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Yeah. That happened particularly with some of the paratroopers that went in ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't land. But they did their job and made it easier for us to get to where we were going.
Okay, after that first day, come nightfall, did you get dug in or dig foxholes or?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Every time you stopped, you dug in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fortunately. Well, the first experience that I can remember is after we got off the beach and we were moving into some inland, somebody tripped a wire, and it activated a German grenade, and we actually saw the grenade rise up, and we thought sure that anything was going to explode, but it turned out to be when we all scattered and hit the side of the road, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out to be a dud. We got lucky.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then what happened next?
There was another occasion. I don't know what the hell happened, but I got hit right in the center of my helmet, and the bullet went between the helmet and the helmet liner. And it went around the right side, and it came out the back end, and it tore the cover off my entrenching tool, which was a shovel that had a canvas cover on it. I didn't know this until when we stopped and I went down, when I needed the shovel, I went to get it, and I took my pack off. I see that the canvas thing was all tore apart. But all I got out of it was a little flesh wound. Just creased my forehead. It bled, but it wasn't even serious enough to go to a first aid, so there was no record of that. But that was, people would look at me with a hole in the center of my helmet and say, what the hell are you doing walking around? You ought to be dead, you know.
Okay, and where did you advance to after that? I mean, did you fight in the hedgerows or?
Oh yeah, we went through the hedgerows, and which was remarkable is that there were so many of them. It separated the hedgerows is what separated the various fields, probably the various properties of one owner to the other. And that there were times when the Germans would be on one side of the hedgerow and we'd be on the other. We could hear them talking. So it was hopefully a matter of using the mortars to have a direct hit of the mortars there and get them out of the way, or have the high explosive enough so that they'd get the order to move out. One of the greatest things that I thought that happened was, as far as the tanks were concerned, was that these hedgerows were high and they were thick and they were overgrown with bushes. I mean, just to get over them, you made yourself a very, very visible target. But a few days into the battle, they discovered that they could put like a snow plow on the front of the tanks. So one of these tanks come up and hit one of these hedgerows, well, you got to path through it. And this made things a lot easier. So the engineers deserved a lot of credit for coming up with that idea. So you could go.
Okay.
I can remember going through. Well, St. Lo was one of the big battles. Some of these, I tried to review some of these names beforehand, but I couldn't find them. The St. Lo and that whole Normandy province was that was the first campaign, northern France. Then the 2nd Division got assigned to go to Brest, which was a submarine pen for the Germans. They had an extensive submarine base there, very well fortified, Top of it, well, they had it, oh, if I said 10 foot thick of concrete on top, I'm being conservative. Probably was more than that, because it was very well fortified. But they just didn't, they didn't want the bombers to do any damage to the submarines, and they had a lot of them there. They also had an airport that entered on one side of Brest, and this was our objective, to go through, take the airport and then get into Brest. While we were at the airport that I got hit by a high explosive shell, and it tore a big piece of shrapnel, tore another chunk out of my steel helmet. This took me out of action.
So you received another head wound.
I got a, yeah, well, the first one was just a flesh wound. That didn't amount to much.
Okay.
In fact, it didn't prevent me from doing anything. I guess I did what I had to do. But the other one there, well, that just knocked me out, I guess. And that was, we were preparing to go out on a patrol. You know, in fact, we were looking over one of these hedgerows to determine where we had to go. When this explosion occurred, come from out of nowhere, we didn't see anything. But part of that explosion, I hit this big piece of shrapnel, tore, probably a 3 or 4 inch hole in my right side of my helmet. So that kind of knocked me silly, and next thing I know, I'm picked up on a stretcher and I'm carried back to an aid station. And from an aid station, I was taken to a ship back at Cherbourg to go back to England. Just about that time, prior to that time, they had just issued the camouflage outfits. These were just coming out. And I was a scout at that time, so I was issued a camouflage outfit. When I was placed on the ship to go back to England, the personnel thought that I was a part of the German POWs that were going back to England. I was put down in the hold of the ship.
Oh my God.
No, I didn't realize this. I just looked around and I just saw a bunch of guys with the German cap on, and I thought, well, where's my guys? I didn't see any. And then they were starting to pass out K rations. This is to give them something to eat. And I didn't think much of that. Well, we got K rations, that's what we'd been eating anyway. So about that time, one of the guys came down one of the gangways, one of the sailors on the ship. And we looked at each other, and there was a recognition there. It turned out he was a guy that I went to school with.
Oh my
He's
God.
a sailor on a ship that I'm going back to England on. We took Russ Norton was his name. We took geometry together. And he came over to me. I didn't recognize him at first because he had a mustache. He didn't have it in school. But he came over to me and said, "What the hell are you doing here?" Well, I said, "This is where they put me." He says, "You're down here with the German POWs." He says, "You don't belong here." So he got in touch with somebody, and they moved me topside, put me on a bed with a nice soft mattress, and saw that I got a hot meal. He got in touch with my parents, or he got in touch with his father and told him that he had met me, and that I was wounded, but I wasn't seriously wounded, I was going to live. And his parents got in touch with my father and told him, and this all happened before the War Department notified him. So that was one of the highlights of Russ.
Now let me ask you this, did you get to keep that helmet as a souvenir? No?
That would have been quite a souvenir. No, that helmet ended up on the battlefield someplace in Brest. Never got to keep it. No. But fortunately, Russ and I both made it through the war, and he ran a filling station afterwards, and I used to be one of his customers, but we often talked about it.
Now, how long were you in the hospital for?
Well, I was there a couple of months.
Okay.
Because this had to be probably in August, in probably the latter part of August we were in Brest. In September and October I was in a hospital in Oxford, England.
Mm-hmm.
And because toward the end of my stay there, I was allowed to go into Oxford on a pass. And I went into to a USO. Never saw anybody from Whitehall other than Russ Norton. But in going through a USO in Oxford, England, I come across the name of a guy that I worked with in the Capitol Theatre, who had been a visitor at the USO there. His name was Leo Hurtivus. So I thought, well, he'd been there before me anyway. But that was just to see his name from somebody,
Yeah.
and he had Whitehall on it, Whitehall, New York. So just to see somebody's name from home was a treat. Okay. All the while I was there, I had this great big bandage on the side of my head. It was very conspicuous. You couldn't hardly wear a hat with it because it bulged also.
Mm-hmm.
But shrapnel, small bits of shrapnel kept coming out of that thing years afterwards. But after recovery there, I was sent back through the replacement depots back onto the continent. And in fact, one of our replacement depots was at Bastogne, Belgium, near Bastogne and Normandy. And Bastogne was where the Battle of the Bulge took place, and Normandy was where they had the atrocity of all the Germans there, shot a whole bunch of people there and buried a whole bunch of them. We were right in that area.
Now, did you go back to your old unit, or?
No. They assigned me at that time to the 104th Division, which was the Timberwolf Division, and this was under the command of General Terry Allen. General Terry Allen was the general in charge of the 1st Division when they landed in Africa. So after that campaign was over, he got assigned to the 104th, which is one of the latter divisions that entered Europe. Terry de la Mesa Allen, that was his name. Yeah. And he made a number of a number of the reunions after we came back. And he's the one that inaugurated the night fighting. So we did our attacks at nighttime, which was successful. A good time. So it was after the 104th Division had landed in Holland and come through Holland. I joined them just after Holland at a place called Eschweiler, Germany. And then we went through over the Rhine River and Cologne and through Germany. And but I was with them right up until we met the Russians at the Elbe River.
Now, what was that like, meeting the Russians?
Just before, all right. There was one point in the fighting there where we were in a forest, and the Germans had commandeered a American machine gun nest. They had taken the American machine gun. And there's a very distinct difference between the German machine gun and ours. The German machine gun go brrr, they had a rapid rate of fire, where ours is brrr, brrr, or boop, 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 boop. Almost, you could almost count it 1, 2, 3, where the Germans is boom. At one point we thought that our own troops were firing against us because this American machine gun was firing at us. And we were in the forest at the time. It was the Hurtgen Forest or wherever it was, but anyway, it was in the wintertime. Snow was deep, it was cold. We couldn't see where we were going. But we hear this guy, and we were yelling to him, "We're Americans, stop your firing." Of course, we didn't realize it was Germans that had an American machine gun. see. Uh,
Now it says
A
you were,
patrol eventually eliminated that machine gun, or got them out of the way, or a mortar silenced them, or did something, anyway.
now it says on your application you received a stomach wound?
That was just before we met the Russians, just before just before the Elbe, where the two forces joined up. Or before we hit that, we were in a small town, and I picked up a stomach wound. I don't know if it was a bullet wound from a machine gun or a sniper or something, got me in the stomach. I could see the guys crawling up. Of course, I had a machine gun at that time, and of course I was trying to provide cover for the guys that were coming back of me. And then we got the order to withdraw, I guess, to a more strategic location, or back to where we dug some foxholes. And somebody yelled to me that, well, we got to move out, or move back anyway. Sure, we had lost a hell of a lot of men trying to get as far as we were, and I felt, holy crap, what are we turning around and going back for? I mean, I can see the guys ahead of us. As far as I thought, we were moving ahead, but apparently the elements on both sides of us were having problems, and they weren't, so we couldn't do it alone. So we got the order to make what's called a strategic withdrawal. It's a retreat, but literally it's a strategic withdrawal. So I'm about probably the last one to leave there, because I had to cover all these guys that are back of me. So the machine gun was one of those that you could fire from the hip. It had a bipod in the front. Originally the machine gun had a tripod. Put the tripod down and you put the machine gun on that. Then they came out with the one that you could fire from the hip, and they had just two spindles in the front. Made it handier. So that's all I'm using. I got a bag of can of ammunition, and that's heavy, and the machine gun on my hip, so I'm just giving them a spray in here just to keep them down while my troops get out of the way. I'd spray them, and then I'd turn around and run, and turn around and spray them again. Well, one time when I turned around to spray, the bullet got me in the stomach. It twisted the belt, twisted the buckle on my cartridge belt. It went through a package of tobacco that I had in my jacket. It tore a gap in my abdomen, and but I suppose I don't recall any pain. Probably the shock of it or something. And I was able to run, still able to run. So after I was hit, I got behind a wall. That's where I was headed for anyway, a brick wall. So if I could just get out of sight of them, while they wouldn't be able to follow it up and hit me again. So after I got behind the wall, I guess I collapsed, and then I got picked up with a stretcher case, and somebody carried me back. And this time they put me on a plane and carried me back to a hospital in Paris, and then from Paris I was put on a hospital ship and brought back to the States.
Now, do you recall approximately what date that was in time? Was it towards the end of the war?
While I was in the hospital in Paris, the Germans surrendered.
Okay. Now, do you remember where you were when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt?
No, I don't remember where I were, but we learned about it through the Stars and Stripes, which was a newspaper. And of course, we never got the Stars and Stripes until probably days or weeks after it was published. But that was the first indication that we got that President Roosevelt was alive.
Now, what was like?
It was one issue of the Whitehall Times that I received, that I learned that one of my friends, Byron Hutman, another one of my classmates and a guy that I worked with in the theater, where I learned where he got killed.
Wow.
I think he was killed around the Battle of the Bulge, somewhere in there. I didn't know that until, I read it in the Whitehall Times.
Now, when you heard about the end of the war, of course, everybody, the end of the war in Germany, was there a lot of celebration?
There was a celebration in the wards,
Mhm.
right. I've mentioned this before, on another interview, but the guys were taking their condoms and blowing them up and making balloons of them and bouncing them all over. I was
Okay.
part of the celebration. Everybody was happy.
So you were sent back to the States to
I came
recuperate?
back on a hospital ship, which was great because you got fed 3 times a day. The hospital ships had rations and a half. They fed you well. So I came back to St. Albans Naval Hospital. That was my first stop.
And how long did it take you to recuperate?
I don't remember. I think it was, what was that? I think it was in August that Japan surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
I was home on a leave from the hospital when Japan surrendered.
Okay.
And this is another celebration. I come from a railroad town and all the train whistles were going off and the church bells were ringing. Everybody was running down to church to say a prayer for thankfulness. That was another big celebration. I thought, here I was in the hospital for when Germany surrendered, and I happened to be lucky enough to be home for when Japan surrendered. And the ironical thing about it was after the war in Germany was over, the 2nd Division was scheduled to go to Japan. And I wasn't looking forward to that at all. Of course, I wasn't with the 2nd at that time,
Yeah.
but the 2nd Division was scheduled to go. In fact, they loaded up and were on the high seas to go to Japan when Japan surrendered.
Okay. Now, where and when were you discharged?
I was after St. Albans Naval Hospital. I was put on limited duty, and I was sent to Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, because I could typewrite. And all I did was down there, I just typed orders until from whenever I got there for a couple of months until I got discharged in November.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out on points at November 5th, 1945.
Okay. And when you came back home, did you make use of the GI Bill at all?
I took on-the-job training.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at a grocery store before I went in, so I took on-the-job training for store manager. So I was in that for a couple of years.
Okay. Did you join any veterans organizations?
Yeah, in January of 46, I was invited to join the American Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And been the Legion ever since.
Okay. Have you maintained contact with anyone you were in the service with at all?
No. I tried, but wasn't successful.
Okay. After the service, you came back to Whitehall,
Right.
and did you? You mentioned that you became a store manager. Was that locally?
Yeah, but then after I went through the on-the-job training, I decided that I'd rather have a different line of work.
Uh-huh.
And there was a civil service exam came up for the post office, so I took that.
Mm-hmm.
Took that and I passed it, and then I got, I think it was in 49 that March of 49 that I went into the post office.
Mm-hmm. And you stayed there till you returned?
Stayed there until November of 85.
Okay. All right. How do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
Well, probably a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a hometown boy, never got out of Whitehall. If I went to Glens Falls, that was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it broadened your horizons for one thing. Yeah, you saw
Okay.
you saw a different culture, a different way of living. I was kind of glad that in high school I had taken French, so this kind of came in handy when I was in France. I thought, well, I often thought of it, our French teacher would say, mes amis, she says, I can't wait till you have an opportunity to see La Belle France. And we're sitting there thinking, when the heck are we going to go to France? We were freshmen and sophomores in high school, with no thought of going to France. Never realized that someday we'd end up there. But at least you can make yourself understood, and if you wanted something to eat, well, you could tell them what you wanted to eat, or thank them for whatever they did. But
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
well, you're welcome.
Very good.
Certainly
And
didn't
you
need
also
it.
give directions too, didn't you?
Oh, okay. Now we've got some photographs that you brought.
Yeah, there's some newspaper clippings there.
Do you want to hold them up and?
When's your next one due? I'll be back.
Okay.
This is
I'm gonna have to lie a lot to keep up with you.
well, this is the Whitehall Times from November of 2007 for Veterans Day last year. They interviewed me and took a picture of.
Okay. I can zoom right in on that. That's you in the photograph.
That's me in the photograph, and that's just with some of the awards that I was presented with.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
This was taken probably Memorial Day of last year.
And you were also American Legion post commander too?
Oh yes, I was post commander back in '49. But I've been active in the Legion and have gone from post commander, county commander, district commander, and department vice commander.
Okay.
I was in the board of directors for the American Legion Boys State for 30-some odd years. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
What are the medals you received?
Well, the Bronze Star is the highest one, and the Purple Heart with cluster for the 2 wounds.
And you received the Combat Infantry badge
the
too?
Combat Infantry badge, the Good Conduct Medal, the Victory Medal, the New York State Conspicuous Service Cross. I guess that's about it.
Well, that's pretty impressive. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.